One other thing too about artworks, thinking back before we get into the specifics of the text about the Van Gogh shoes and all this and all that, we talked about artworks as disclosive, or we could say Heidegger puts it this way sometimes in his later works: they image forth something. And you want to hear in here something that was taken up by a lot of 20th century Catholic thinkers, particularly Karl Rahner, Paul Tillich, a sacramental notion of something. Think about what a sacrament is. You might have had to memorize this if you're Catholic. A sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace, or that was the Baltimore Catechism. The newer Catechism is a sacrament is an efficacious sign instituted by Christ and entrusted to the church, through which or by which divine life is dispensed. In other words, there's something about the sacramental nature of something where reality is furthered by it, right? I don't know if you've ever had this experience with Eucharist or confession, but you hear a lot of people who criticize the sacraments and say, well, you don't need to do that, or marriage is just a piece of paper. You don't need to confess your sins to a priest. You don't need to take communion. No, maybe not. Maybe not. But there's something about it, and a richer experience of reality of what that sacrament or what that matter points to than just, private prayer to God, for example, confession. Well, certainly that's my experience, or certainly that's the Catholic theology behind it, okay? And Heidegger's adding to that. He was raised a Catholic before he broke with the church. He was actually raised a very traditionalist Catholic. Anyway, artworks image forth. They make something present. They make a reality present. They disclose meaning, right? And you want to think about it this way. Notice what's been going on. Notice the hermeneutic process, the interpretive process going on in the work. And I'll go this way and this way with it. Remember, we started off what an artwork was, and we looked at a thing, and then we said, well, what's a thing? Well, a thing just shows itself as equipment, right? And we don't really see that even about a thing, because whenever I use, for example, a glass, whenever I use the glass, the equipmental nature of the equipment disappears. It vanishes in its use. When I start thinking about it, I really can't use it, right? It's kind of like it has to conceal itself in order for you to use it. That's how tools are. But this is interesting. In the artwork, we see the thing in its equipmental nature as rooted in earth and world. Okay. So we have a thing imaging itself forth in equipment, or we get at a thing. We can only see a thing through equipment. But we can only see a thing qua thing, or the thingly character of the thing, the earth and world of the thing, through the equipment as represented in an artwork. So now we have the imaging forth of the thing in the equipment, imaging itself forth in an artwork, right? Then we have, of course, Heidegger's interpretation of the artwork, right? Which images forth the equipment, which images forth the thing, right? And then in turn images forth an artwork as well. Then you have Armitage's interpretation of Heidegger's, right, interpretation of the artwork, which is imaging forth the equipment of the thing, right? So it goes thing, equipment, artwork, Heidegger, Armitage's interpretation. And of course, when you interpret this and when you appropriate it, that'll be your own interpretation. So there's levels of imaging, and each level of that mimesis, that doubling or copying, is adding to the reality of what Heidegger's talking about, or the reality itself, sacramentally.